to order. And I note the presence of a quorum. Alex, would you like to take the lead?
Gladly. Thank you, Eric. So picking up from where we've been moving and tracking for a little over a year now with some intermittent breaks here and there for scheduling, we have come to the course of in the plan now where we have what staff has been able to do is give to you guys as part of your agenda, and we can kind of go through some items as a consolidated markup of the revisions that we've been off and on meeting and coming to some form of a consensus with the commission. So I've already gotten a little bit of feedback on the document, and in hindsight, it probably would have been proper of me at the end of last week maybe to send a communication to the group saying, hey, agenda's posted, we're at this culmination of where we've been moving forward. Look it over ahead of time if you could, and if you have some minor changes that we can be ready to run through in the meeting. I don't plan on going page by page or item by item, section by section, as we've kind of been doing that for the better part of the month or several months. The large traction we've probably made has been since the end of last year, I would think. Just to cover one topic real quick, Commissioner Taylor gave me a little bit of feedback on one of our major work items, which would be on page 12. And it was one of the items that we discussed at the last meeting specifically about changing in roofing material. Just a clear, more concise way of putting what we've kind of drafted thus far. And that would be new item number 7 on page 12 under major work. Replacement, this would be the revision now. Replacement of roofing material, replacement of roofing with a different material or style, period.
Take out of a different?
Yes, and just move different and right before material or style.
Anybody have any?
One more time, please.
Placement of roofing with a different material or style.
Anybody have any objections? Just by way of background, as you all, I hope, remember, at the last meeting when we scheduled this work session, it was with the idea that that Alex would incorporate all of the input that we've all put into the product over the last several months, and that it was going to be, hopefully everybody's going to approve that without any further changes. So naturally, in the real world, there are changes. Does anybody have any objection to that change? I do not.
Yeah, that's what we keep him around. And two, it should be worth mentioning, again, we got a little bit of time we can kind of go through, with bearing in mind that a lot of this is stuff we've kind of really hashed out through, again, the course of about a year or so. But this is a work session. The next step would be if the commission is ready to make a recommendation to Village Council on this document, it can be done so at the next regular meeting, so that could even be considered in the regular meeting later today. Or if there are other items that, we may need to scratch our head a little bit more on. There's one item that you may recall that Richard and I were to do some homework on, and we've been doing our homework. Not at the last minute either. We've really been working on this over the course of a month. But when we get to that point, we can bring forward kind of where we are and throw some ideas out of the commission, see what your thoughts are, get some feedback from you, and then further feedback on whether or not to incorporate that with this set of revisions or if it's something we want to look at another time.
With that in mind, I have having said there should be no further changes made at this meeting, I've got some changes I'd like to make at this meeting. On page 13, the items aren't numbered, but it's the paragraph that begins, "The deadline for receipt of completed applications for major work." About halfway down that paragraph, after the word "et cetera," it says, "sufficient enough for the HPC to determine whether or not." Does everybody see that? I believe that sufficient and enough are duplicative, and that the word "enough" should be stricken. That would be my suggestion. And
Could we also strike whether or not? It's either sufficient or it isn't.
determine whether or not it meets, whether it meets. Good, good, good.
I think it's. If it meets, you could put that in there.
Whether, I think, is grammatically superior.
It's or not that is deleted, the whether stays, I believe.
Could we just
Grammatically.
say to
Yes.
determine if it meets the applicable standards? Or whether it meets,
Whether.
Whether seems to me to be preferable because if suggests it's a one-way decision, whereas whether is a two-way decision. Be my, anybody object
Either or
to,
for me.
to,
Either or for me, I don't care.
okay, so nobody objects to striking or not. Okay, and then the final change I would like to suggest is in the next sentence. It says, "An application for major work will only be scheduled for public hearing." I think we should say will not be scheduled for a public hearing. And then it goes on, it says, before the HBC, after the village planner determines. I think we should say until the village planner determines the application is complete. So the sentence would read, an
Right.
application, in the middle of that paragraph we were talking about, an application for major work will not be scheduled for a public hearing before the HBC until the village planner determines the application is complete.
I think that's,
I think that's clearer.
yes.
Got it?
If they don't say it's complete, then it doesn't come to us.
That's right.
That's the issue.
And we've talked about this before, and we really need to make sure we're giving Alex the ammunition to require applicants to present completed applications in a timely fashion so that we don't, so that he's not having to scramble the last week before a hearing to get them to fill in blanks that should have been filled in before.
And it's hard on the applicant, too. If they only have half the stuff they need in there, we bring them in here and rake them over the coals,
Yeah, right.
trying to help them get the other half of it in, and that's not particularly necessarily a pleasant process, nor is it something that we ought to be looking at doing. So I think having staff look and get it into the right things, because they know what's got to be there and what doesn't have to be there.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we're not going to approve something like that anyway. We're going to say, come back next month. when
Yeah,
it's- so-
which is,
Which we don't want to do.
right, I mean, not unnecessarily, I mean,
Yeah.
if we have to, we have to, but it's not something that we ought to plan on doing, is I guess the issue.
Right.
Something may pop up, and if it does, then that's what we got to do,
Right.
but we shouldn't intentionally bring it into knowing that that's what we're likely to do.
Right. Anybody else have any changes they want to suggest to this document? Yes, sir.
yes, I'm back in the room. First, sorry I missed last month's. Starting on page 11, the new item number 4.18. I suggest we change that to read,
I'm sorry,
Where are you?
page 11?
page 11.
Right.
I have no 4.18. I have.
It's just where 4 is stricken and
Oh,
18.
18.
Oh, I see,
so
18.
gotcha.
Oh, I
Okay.
beg your pardon, 18, yes,
Okay.
Right.
18.
Thank you.
I suggest it be reworded as follows. Replacement of doors and windows that are the same material or an allowed substitute material and that are the same style, size, and color as the existing doors and windows. My objection to the wording as it is, it suggests that an allowed substitute material is allowed to be a different size, color, and style. So I'm trying to rope in that if you use a substitute material, you're still required to match in style, size, and
But
color.
if I may, David, I actually think it's more than that, because substitute material only really applies to material. It doesn't necessarily apply to style, size, and color. So I think what you have proposed, tagging the allowed substitute to material and separating the other three characteristics is probably clearer and a good idea.
Now, the question is, materially, how do we do that with the words?
So would you, David, would you go over your proposed language again?
Yes. Replacement of doors and windows that are the same or an allowed substitute material and that are the same style, size, and color as the existing doors and windows.
Could we say the same
Material or
same
substitute.
material or an allowed substitute material? I just think that would be clearer.
Yes.
Okay.
Or allow?
Same material twice, the same material or an allowed substitute material.
All we want them to be able to do is change the materials of it.
Yep.
Everything else has to be the same. Now, the question is, yeah, how do you get there in the wording?
I think David's wording was certainly very close to that.
How about placement of doors and windows that are the same or an allowed substitute material, but matching the existing style, size, and color?
I'd replace the word but with and I'd be in for that.
Just say in the same style, material, size, and color.
Even better.
Yes.
If this is all we have to discuss today, or these minor, yeah, we've
No,
done
it's-
some good work.
These are good.
David just dropped the mic. He's,
You got to recall too,
wasn't
David
here
didn't
last time.
necessarily agree on all the changes, as part of the group. So,
Well,
again,
actually-
all these things in here maybe we were split 5-1 or
Whatever.
6-1 or
We're not
however.
going
This
to let
is
him,
what it is
we're not
now.
going to
We
let
gotta
him
fix
slip
it.
one of those other ones back in here.
Got to watch out. Okay.
else you got?
I only have one more, and then I have a sort of a broad suggestion. On page 23, this one's a mess. I would say that the old item 4, as originally written before the edits, is better than the splitting out of items 2, 3, 5, and 6. In general, the reading of it, the original is clearer with the bullet points A, B, C, and D than splitting them out. That's the first item. Second item has to do with shutters in general. It's possible to have one shutter serving one window, which means anything talking about half the width only tells half the story. Might I suggest, for example, if we go back to the original, where it says, item B, each shutter must be equal to the height of the window opening and 1/2 the width, maybe something closer to shutter dimensions must be such that when closed, the shutters cover the entire window, period. That covers,
Shutters,
right, shutter or shutters. That covers the,
S after it or something to indicate.
covers the arch top, covers the one shutter versus two, and it's shorter.
Well, except they don't have to be closable.
If,
Here, that if they were closable and closed, that
yes,
would happen.
yeah, even better.
I haven't suggested any language, I just suggested the problem, somebody else has to solve it.
I like the appear part. Shutter dimensions must be such that they would appear, that when they, that,
Should they be closed?
should they be closed, the shutters cover the entire window, period.
We do have to say then that they don't have to be closable.
Yes,
Do we say, is that stated anywhere else?
yes.
I was trying to figure out where.
Item number A, the original 4A says, should be.
Okay.
That's a hard one to, that's pretty restrictive. Because mine, if you drive, mine are, we're on record, but probably 80% being able to close. But, so I wouldn't meet that standard. But the optics, it appears as if they have appropriate scale. And you, how many times have we had a window that has a center window, maybe it's 3 frames, and it may not have a 4/1, or it may not have nice character detail, but shutters would go a long way to dressing that up. But that's 3 windows, and it would be completely disproportionate were those 2 to close to cover the entire window, the picture window.
So I would suggest in the case of three windows in a row with no space between them, the big, wide unit would be, historically, would be better with no shutters.
And you've made that comment in past, and that I think is extremely subjective. I may disagree, you may, that's up to the homeowner, but this is written as a must. So I don't know how on the back end we give teeth to whoever needs to enforce that compliance if that window doesn't close, but it still has the optics of having the appropriate scale for that window.
Well, it's a should. If we go back to the original wording, it's just a should.
Number 7 is just a should. If you
Okay.
go back to the original version.
And of course,
But our new version's a must, right?
I don't know,
Yeah,
which one?
shutters are
2,
shutters,
3, 5, or 6?
Each shutter must be equal to the height of the
window
window opening and 1/2 the width. And if it's an arched window, it has to
Must
be an
have
arch.
arch as well.
Those are musts. And I agree with those. I
Well,
like shutters that don't look as though they would.
but again, you go back to the three windows in a row, you aren't going to make shutters that cover all 3 of them.
Well, historically, they could be
So maybe you
bifold
don't have
shutters. I mean,
shutters, so
To Richard's point, if you had a bifold shutter, for example,
Right.
a pair of bifold shutters, each of those 4 parts would cover the 3 windows in the bifold open position. Each one would look like it's a little too small, but would be historically accurate.
But I would argue that it would not be congruous within the historic district, because find a bifold shutter in the historic district doesn't exist.
You may not even know it, and we may have driven by, I don't know, I'm not the historic wizard here, but my guess is there are some, and we just don't know it because they are in fact open.
or they were and aren't anymore.
I know what you're trying to achieve. There may be a simpler way to do it without being as restrictive, where we do paint ourselves into a corner, and then we have these musts, and we have a case where we don't really want to enforce it because it doesn't look right by the
Well,
home.
we have the ability to not enforce it.
I think we're putting the onus on the applicant or their designer, or whatever, to make the case.
I mean, if you come in there and it's an old thing, it's the original shutters and original home, and they never did cover the whole window, then that, by definition, overrides any of this in the first place, because it is congruent to the way it always has been.
Let me try a different tack, closer to what you're suggesting. So let's say we strike item 4 as it's redlined now, and I go back to item 1. I would leave in historic character of the structure. We certainly want it to be compatible with the historic character of the structure, so I don't know why we would strike that to begin with. Item 2, I would say we'd add the language that allows or encourages shutters to appear to cover the whole window, and that wouldn't be a must. In terms of the width of the shutter, not the arch top.
Would you incorporate, David, in that the whether operable or not? Is that where you would put that in?
We have that elsewhere.
But it seems like you don't want to put this condition first, to me anyway.
Yeah, that'd be okay. I'm okay. And then the new item 5, I have a question about and blinds. Where did that come from? Are we talking about shutters or interior things, like blinds or curtains, or what are we talking about?
I think this, I can't recall who, but some of this was drafted up and given to us for consideration.
Yeah, I think blinds doesn't belong there.
Are there
unless-
exterior blinds?
anything that would even, I mean, you could see them from the outside of the house, but all blinds have always been on the inside that I've ever seen.
I would be happy striking that.
And there are exterior louvers, but I don't think you'd call them blinds.
I know you have the,
Louvers on the shutter. Most of the shutters have louvers on them.
we have the retractable mosquito screens. We've had one or two of those come, but that's handled differently.
Right.
I just strike blinds, it's confusing to me.
Yeah.
And then it says, replace deteriorated, missing shutters, and then it says to match. Does that mean must or should? Should match, must match, or to match?
That,
The whole concept,
Replace, you replace.
you're replacing an operable with an operable, I think was the intent. If they were operable, then you got to replace them with an operable.
Well, this deals with matching the original size, dimension, and so forth. I just am confused by the word to, because
I think we have to take a step back and ask, what is this applying to? Is this someone, no, but is this someone who is proposing to make this, or we observe in looking at the building that the shutters are deteriorated, and as part of the approval, are we require, almost as it's like we're requiring them to come up to code? I don't think so.
I don't think we're requiring them to come to code. That isn't our business. It's,
If
This is-
they want to replace, then, yeah.
So, in a replacement of deteriorated or missing shutters, either must or should, and so forth.
Really is handled as a minor work through you, right? Or basic work. Because that's a repair.
As long as it would check that box, yep.
if we had a situation in which someone was not proposing to replace deteriorated shutters, and we look at the building and we say, you got deteriorated shutters there, are we going to say we're not going to approve your application because you haven't replaced the deteriorated shutters? And I think the answer to that is no.
unless it impacts the historical difference in the building. If they're half there, then maybe, yes, we would say that, because it does impact the historical.
But they're not proposing to change anything.
I don't think it's our job to,
For approval.
that's a policing activity.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be part of the
I'm-
request
I'm-
in front of the
I'm
commission. but
suggesting that we don't need item 5.
I think that may be right.
Maybe that takes care of all.
Well, except the last half of that, I think, is important. This, keeping in mind, this is
Yes,
existing houses.
Yes,
If the original shutter, yada, yada.
yes.
Yeah.
Except for you got to restructure something there, because
So whoever buys Richard's house and the shutters are falling off, they got to be operable.
But I guess I'm not sure what it means to say if the original was operable, the new one must be operable, or doesn't have to be operable, it just has to look like it would be.
well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, too.
We're kind of giving them an out there if it was operable. but-
Yeah, I mean, we could put new ones on. If we put new ones on, they could just look operable. But if you put new ones on and they look operable, but the old ones were operable, now you got to have operable ones again?
Or not, they just have to look like they were, would be.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
The original shutter was operable or appeared to be operable. The replacement must be operable or appear to be operable. We have
Like for like.
We have
Like for like.
a parallelism there.
Yeah.
We just need a lead-in that says, when replacing deteriorated or missing shutters.
If they were, yeah, if, you can go on from that, if the original shutter was operable, then the replacement must be operable or
I think that's
appear
right.
to be operable.
I think that's right, I think that's useful.
Put those words on the beginning of that second sentence.
Yeah. I have only one more. Item,
One, before we're still on that page, just so I can get direction from the group. David made the suggestion of taking items, it was part of 1, 2, 3, in 5 and putting them back in A through D.
No, I've scratched that idea
You're done? Okay.
on Richard's good judgment. So I'm back to keeping in 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 2, 3, 5, and 6.
5, the only one we've really modified then is 5. We struck the first sentence and added the 3 words or whatever it was to the beginning of the second sentence.
So that leaves one more on this page, item 10. It's pretty obvious to all of us that canvas is a woven fabric. Could it just be said, awnings shall be fabric? Or must be fabric?
I'm
Or
fine with
should
that.
be fabric?
I thought there were cases where we allowed different materials. Is that not correct?
They're all
There's lots of different types of fabric, I guess.
woven fabric.
We do not allow metal shutters.
Right. So all we're saying is fabric of whatever type you desire.
Can't be a chunk of metal or,
Well, there are metal awnings in the village center.
And I'm even
Are.
thinking of like this umbrella fabric.
Thinking,
Yeah.
that's
But
again, woven
canvas
fabric.
is a type of fabric,
Yeah.
you know, cloth and all sorts of, I like
Right.
your idea of deregulation.
Well,
Just
then it
keep
comes
going with
back
what you're
and you
doing.
said they're metal ones in the village?
Yeah.
There are.
In commercial buildings or?
Yes.
Okay, so if somebody comes in and wants to replace one by metal, it would be a replacement of in kind, but it wouldn't meet our rules.
It wouldn't
Yeah.
even come before us. If it was exactly the same,
They
Alex
were
would handle
replacing
his basic
kind.
work.
But it still also has to meet the standard.
Standard says it's got to be fabric of some kind.
It is preferable that awnings be fabric.
Must or should, I think, not suddenly it is preferable.
Okay, should.
Should be fabric.
Okay. One, and then I have a general,
Before we go off, just going back to your number 1, when we talk about the historic characteristics of a structure, that in theory could apply to a structure that was built in 1992. Inside, I mean,
and if it were, the style of that structure is appropriate for 1992 and should remain so. You don't want to put a 1750 element onto a 1996 house.
but I think the implication of historic is not that it was built 15 years ago.
But I would take
The
the word
inference.
historic out, character of this.
I'd be happy with that, removing just the word historic.
That's a good solution. Whatever the character is, it has to be compatible with that.
Yeah.
There are some of them that I'm way more historical than they are.
Well,
Some of those buildings.
There are several of us in this room who can probably make the same claim.
I was trying to be nice. I was-
The last thing in general, if we were to proceed to move this on to the council, would it be more palatable, this is really for you, Alex, I think, palatable for them to receive a package of changes short of the technical sections? As we know, there are lots of other technical sections in the works, including the one you're working on with Richard. So would it be possible, for example, to make a motion that moves this along up to item 3? Because they're of
there may be
similar
good
type
reason.
or
I'm just asking.
character, or as opposed to getting into the weeds? I mean, as soon as we start into item 3 and beyond, it's the technical details.
What is item 3, I'm sorry?
Existing houses, the beginning of the technical sections, all the rest.
Like the applicable standards, John. Like,
Well,
I guess we give them the choice. I mean, at the end of the day, they got to know what they're approving.
yeah, I
the
mean, the
changes.
answer
Oh,
is,
okay.
this has got to go through, and I don't know why holding back the technical section would,
Well, I guess part of it is selfish. I haven't gotten to some of those yet.
well,
Give them another crack at it.
and the other issue is, we always have another crack at it. I mean, this is exactly what we got into when we did the big rewrite, was we ended up, we weren't going to move it forward until every last word was correct, and there was no more details anybody had question on. Well, let me tell you, that never ends.
Okay.
It never, ever ends, because somebody sees something a little different, and they say, well, why didn't we do that, or why don't we do that?
And I,
That's how it ended up being taken 3 years trying to rewrite this thing.
and I think we are also doing this in response to a request from council not to do that, but
Right,
to,
well, and I
when we have a chunk that is reasonable.
give it to them and let them work through it, just the same as we do, and then go on to the next chunk. You know, as we find, and we hopefully prioritize the chunks we're doing, you know, as we find them and send them up in chunks instead of sending up this massive document that nobody
Yeah.
has any idea what.
Yeah, I'm actually
and-
suggesting we reduce the chunk, not make it bigger.
I guess I just don't see real reason to reduce it.
Okay.
The other
I
thought,
may be wrong, I'm just saying, it's got to go up anyway, and this isn't a huge chunk, and if you take this technical chunk and 5 more chunks to go with it, that gets pretty stiff too, to review on their part.
I think it's fair to say that these are changes that experience has shown could be, would clarify
Things that,
requirements that have, you know, we're not putting in new requirements. We're clarifying the existing requirement that everything has to be congruous, or as congruous as reasonably possible, and we've applied those standards to various parts of the buildings involved.
And also, I think, simplifying or streamlining the process so that some things that have just been rubber stamped become minor work or
So-
what have you.
a lot of this stuff is because of exactly what we did with this massive monster that we did. You can't fix it all at once.
thank all three of you for saying all those points. That one, I think any of us that were involved with that will echo Tom's remarks on that. That was 2 years of a lot of our lives we will never get back.
I didn't even spend the whole 2 years on it. I just got the last 6 months or so on it.
But to what Eric and John said, like each one of these rewrites, again, it was very clear to us because we were lucky enough at that point when we got the form of this document adopted in May of 2019, that at that time, 2 sitting council members were originally part of that working group who put in a lot of effort and time. And so they knew what type of monumental task that was and said, let's keep it going. And that's one of the charges of the commission is to
That
do
was
this.
one of the things when they put that forward. They said, look, don't ever do this again. It's like committing hara-kiri. You know, it's almost unreturnable because it's so complicated. Take it off in little pieces and keep it up to date was the recommendation that came out of that
and
monster.
And even more to that is each time we're looking at this, and this would be, if God willing, we get this to council soon, is that this will be each and every calendar year now, we have proposed and up to now have been approved amendments to this document. So we're doing our job, but we also should have some sort of goal or objective when we're starting to work into that. So we did have, to Eric and John's points, that was part of what this objective was, and there'll be another objective or goal we want to reach with.
Set for the next round.
So
Take it
consider,
off in biteable chunks. Don't put it in big chunks. Trust me.
so considering it's, how much time do we have left?
17
Probably about
minutes.
5 minutes or so.
I have a lot of changes to make to one small piece here. I don't think we have time to go through them
Okay.
now. Would it be reasonable to put at least just that one aside so I can have a shot at making suggestions?
Which one is it?
It's metal roofs, A5,
What page?
What page?
page 19.
My only thought before even hearing, and I understand, David, because I've been privy to some of the work you've done on that section, is if we were to move forward as is without pulling that section out, would that impede one way, shape, or form? So just,
Might just be confusing if we
I would-
turn right around and change it again, that's all.
Let's see what you got.
Yeah, my point, if there's something then in this package that needs to be replaced that we can't get to today, then that's fine, we go do it to another day.
I just
But
don't
the
want to
whole
delay it
package
another
ought to
month.
stay together.
I'd rather, if we have to redo that one later, okay. I don't want to delay it another month.
Let's see what it is. I mean,
Yeah,
we may
tell us
find
what
out
it
in a
is,
few minutes.
and we got 5 minutes. We could probably even squeeze that to 10 if we had to.
7 minutes.
Making us nervous here, David.
You might read it, and we might all go, yeah, good.
All right, I'm going to read the entire item 5 as I think it ought to be.
Okay.
Metal roofs used to replace existing non-metal roofs must be compatible with the architecture of the existing structure. The material should be unpainted copper, zinc, tin, or tern plate. Alternately, it may be Kynar 500, silicone modified polyester, coated steel or aluminum, or other factory finish in one of the following colors: weathered copper, color, dark brown, dark bronze, dark gray, dark green, dark silver, or matching, weathered, not bright copper, zinc, tin, or tern plate. Exposed galvanized metal is not appropriate.
That's, your
Just
point
generic-
about it being complicated is,
I agree with that, but generically, why the specification in the middle there of some of what sounded to me like products, not materials?
I'd be okay if it simply said factory finish, but paint isn't a good word because some of them aren't paints.
factory finish would make sense, but
And why the conditioning of replacement?
Because it's under replacement roofs. It's under existing houses and you're making changes to the existing house. So if you're going to put in a metal roof where there was not a metal roof, your change to a different material must be thus and so.
Okay.
if you strike, the only thing is I agree with John, striking the materials by name and put factory finished materials or something.
Okay, so I would say metal roofs used to replace existing non-metal roofs must be compatible with the architecture of the existing structure, period. The metal should be unpainted copper, zinc, tin, or tern plate. Alternately, it may be factory finished in one of the following colors and so forth. Secondly, I would strike number 6, having to do with the dimensions altogether, which they're not historically accurate the way we have it written to begin with, and I don't know why we would restrict them to something that is less than.
Accurate, historically accurate, yeah. The way you read it the second time, I would agree to. I don't know about anybody else, but
I think that gets us out of the business of, I got a different product that you didn't happen to list.
try to stay away from product names. The one we really got into, and I think it was before you got here, was, what's the cementation, hardy board.
Hardy board.
It used to say
Cementous-
hardy board, and we threw it
cementous
to
siding.
cement, yeah. And we got rid of the term hardy board because I guess when they put it
Brand
in there, well, that was all they had. But then there are now new products that work just as well as hardy board.
Right, paints are moving faster than that, so.
That's why I'd leave them part out with the other.
For my benefit, what's inadequate about 5 now? What's the issue with 5 as it reads?
It does not allow other metals other than copper, which is historically ridiculous.
Keep in mind, David wasn't here last month when we spent about 40 minutes on this one topic.
Yeah.
I kind of like his answers
Yeah,
better.
I mean, I no objection here.
Well, you may remember that when we finished up last month, and we agreed that we were not going to make any further changes in this document, one exception was David would be allowed to make
That's right.
changes because he wasn't able to be at the last
Wow.
meeting, and we rely on his expertise.
Right.
And
Which I think is a valid,
I think
thought
he
concept.
he has shown his worth.
But just, David, I read copper here as a color only, not as a material, the way it's currently written. Are you saying it is a material?
The current reading is the material should be copper.
I see the word copper being struck.
No, I'm talking about, Richard asked me what was wrong with the original reading, so I'm going back to.
Oh, I meant the one in front of us
No,
now,
the
the
one-
latest version we worked through.
Version
Oh,
here.
Okay.
Not that I'm opposed to your updates, it's just more of, I want to understand what the issue is
Yeah.
as it reads.
Let's see, the material must be compatible with, okay, that's good. But we could strike a requirement dealing with type of metal altogether. I'd be okay with that. As long as we add the sentence that says exposed galvanized metal is not appropriate. That's the one piece that I think would be.
But I don't think, we just say metal here. We don't specify any, and by the way, I think exposed galvanized is fine. I agree with that.
I'm okay if we strike the reference to material.
Okay.
Type of metal altogether,
Call it metal.
metal.
Metal roofs.
There's no metal now available that wasn't available 100 years ago.
Well, uranium, for example. Okay, our consensus is that
I'm
we
good
agree
with
with
that.
the.
Just erring on the side of simplicity.
Yeah.
Because this specificity, it's fantastic, your working knowledge of roofs, but we haven't attacked some of the other sections with the same level of detail.
I'm getting there.
But so you would be fine
So let me try a new tag.
with 5 as written, taking the word metal out, since we're already saying it's a metal roof, and adding in your sentence on galvanized.
Let's see, must be one of the following colors. I would say weathered copper is okay. The word
There.
copper alone is not okay. If you were to put real copper on your roof, it ain't so great in the first few years. Then it starts to be beautiful.
Then it becomes weathered copper.
That's weathered. So I would leave in weathered copper, I'd take the word copper out.
And how does someone buy weathered copper and install a weathered copper roof? How does someone install a weathered coppered roof? Or
You
or
can
color?
you can pre-weather it, or you can buy paint that fakes it.
Hold on.
I mean, going through the
When
oxidization process.
when the old timers put up
It was copper.
weathered copper roof, they didn't put up weather coppered roof. They put up copper and allowed it to
well-
weather.
Then we're back into specifying a particular type of metal and its wonderful characteristic. You can have it both ways.
No, but I think we're not specifying metal as a material, we're specifying it as a color.
Right, but I'm saying, what color is copper? Is it like that old penny, or is it like a green statue, or is it like that?
All the above. If it's copper, it comes out a bright, shiny material, just like a brand-new penny.
It does
And
for a while.
Eventually, it ends up like an old penny, which is
Right.
dull and dark, and that's the
Right.
weathered patina, if you will, or whatever term you use that you're looking for. But
Right.
the old timers sure as heck didn't leave it laying out in the yard for 3 years to let it get that on it before they put it on their house.
Right, so I would
So
suggest that if
they
you're,
had houses that had bright, shiny copper all over them
for a little while.
for a little while, yes.
What the sentence we're talking about now deals with colors, not materials, correct?
Right.
So, must be one of the following colors, okay? Now, if we said copper, just plain copper, that would imply a shiny color that would stay all.
Like a brand new penny.
All the time.
Would
'cause
not,
that's
that
a
would
color.
not weather because it is not actually the material color.
Right, then we're stuck with that forever.
Okay, now,
So we
that
don't
is a
want, we
color
don't
we
want
don't
to
want.
have a bright, shiny copper.
That'd be a little bright
Right.
if I lived
Right.
across the
You
street
can
from
still
it.
put copper on and let it go to old.
So
Right.
what we're doing is, in fact, we're back to where we were before we hashed through this and came up where we did last month, where it just say, metal roofs are allowed, but must be compatible with the existing structure, and must be copper or one of the following colors: weathered copper color, dark brown, dark bronze, dark gray, dark green, dark silver, or black, period. Next sentence, galvanized, unfinished metal is not allowed.
As soon as you specifically allow a particular metal and not others, I think that's a mistake.
So you just want copper out.
No.
He wants the
I like
color
copper. I don't-
copper out.
I like real copper.
The material's fine, I'm saying the color copper, you don't want in there.
Right.
Okay. Now that someone could say, hey, it's congruous with the structure, and we could still approve it, if someone
Oh,
could make
sure.
the case.
All
Sure.
right, so we good? Because we got like 30 seconds.
I think
gotta be good.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And we're striking item 6 altogether.
6, everyone okay with losing
Yes.
6? Okay.
Yep.
All right, it's 5 minutes before the curtain goes up, and the chair has to adjourn.
And the vice chair, too.
Would you like a motion?
This work session is hereby declared
Adjourn.